Hey Peacenicks, today's guest is Chris Cauhape, author of the book Parlor Wales, a City Hall Brawling Borderlander's memoir of drug prohibition's Collateral Mayhem and how to use America's most powerful weapon to conquer substance abuse. Chris was a wonderful person to talk to. He offers another perspective in this awful thing called the war on drugs, the perspective of someone living on the border, someone who has lost people to violent deaths. He watched Mexico change from a nice place he'd drive to for lunch when he was growing up to what it is now. He has some new ideas, new to me at least, for treating addiction. It's actually ancient Chinese medicine. It's an herbal drug you can buy at Walmart called Cordalis. That's Cordalis. I'm always skeptical on herbal remedies to problems, but that's probably my bias as an American consumer who's been manipulated subconsciously with endless marketing campaigns by Big Pharma. I looked into this Cordalis, and yes, I'm now interested. A quick Google search, Cordalis and opiate addiction, and this popped up. The extract of the plant Cordalis yanashuo, I think it's called, prevents morphine tolerance and dependence while also reversing opiate addiction, according to a recent study led by the University of California, Irvine. I'm going to look more into this. So if you like today's podcast, you can order Chris's book, Parlor Wales, on Amazon. But if you can do me a favor by doing Chris a favor, if you like the podcast and want to read his book, resist the temptation of the Amazon app and go to his publisher's website and order it there. I ordered it and it only took 2 minutes. You could save 1 minute on Amazon, and that's cool too. But instead of putting those extra bucks in Bezos' pocket, put it in Chris's pocket by ordering it from the source. Parlor Wales by Chris Cauhape, that's Cauhape, and his publisher is Dorrance Publishing, Dorrance. Okay, so we have our first affiliate that has reached out to help the peace on drugs. We're going to try to make a few bucks so I can keep this train rolling. We're doing big things, great guests, spreading the word, changing people's perspectives. Our next step is trying to gain some funding, so if you want to help support the podcast and would like to try a hemp cigarette that doesn't taste like shit, that is their official motto, and this can be for any reason. You want the medicinal effects of the CBD without the psychoactive effects of THC, or maybe you want to quit smoking and vaping nicotine and want a less addictive alternative. Maybe you used to smoke and miss having the occasional cigarette after work or with a cup of coffee, but if you're like me, every time I would just have one here or there, it quickly turned into a regular habit. These hemp cigarettes have no nicotine or tobacco and may be just the thing you're looking for. It's actually cool that Chris, today's guest, actually brought up a study that found people who use tobacco but also regularly smoke cannabis were less likely to get lung cancer. So I read an article about this and something on the topic. It explained how cigarettes cause cancer and why cannabis didn't seem to. And I remember not long after reading the article, I got a chance to share that knowledge that I hope was correct from the one article I read. It was, I believe, in a respected magazine like Time or something. But I'm standing in line at Guitar Center, and behind me are these two younger guys, late teens or early 20s, and behind them is a man about 10 years older than me. And he's explaining to the young men that cigarettes only cause cancer because of the additives that the cigarette companies add. If you roll your own organic tobacco cigarettes, then you won't get cancer. Now, while there's probably a little truth in organic tobacco without additives causing less cancer and being less addictive, it is in no way true that tobacco by itself, grown organically, won't cause cancer. So I looked back at the young men and I just gave him a quick shake of my head, say discreetly, that's not true. Like, don't listen to him. But also, it was gesticulated in a way that a more mature man may have recognized in the subtext. Like, also, I don't want to have a public debate with this guy either. But the young man immediately pointed to me and said, "This dude is saying you're wrong." So I thought quickly and I said, I just don't want these guys thinking, if they smoke American spirits, they can't get cancer. I was like, if it's only the additives that cause cancer, then why do people who smoke nice cigars, which are 100% pure organic tobacco, even wrapped in the leaf with no paper, still getting mouth cancer? And then I thought about the article I read, and I told them about it. I said, when tobacco combusts, it's set on fire. It releases carcinogens. This is why vaping is theoretically safer. Vaping is heating below combustion, thus not releasing the carcinogens. This is the same reason they say eating too much charred meat from the grill can cause cancer, because the char is created by combustion. Cannabis also releases carcinogens when it's burned. However, the THC acts to slow down the carcinogens, making them far less dangerous. Again, according to this article I read, do your own research before living by this idea. Now, with tobacco, there is an opposite effect. The nicotine in tobacco is a stimulant, and thus actually accelerates the carcinogens. And this is what makes tobacco so dangerous, and why possibly smoking cannabis would decrease the risk of cancer. So anyway, that was a fun debate because I actually won it without a fight. The older dude didn't have much to say. And I ended, to them with, no matter what you hear out here in line at stores or on my podcast or wherever from me or from some guy, no matter how much we sound like we know, always do your own research. So anyway, if you want to try a healthy alternative to tobacco cigarette, or just want to try a hemp cigarette, or just want to support the podcast, go to sugarcali.com. That's SUGARCALI, sugarcali.com. They are a new non-tobacco hemp substitute cigarette company out of California. Again, their motto, finally a hemp cigarette that doesn't taste like shit. They have three flavors, original, peppermint, and vanilla. I've ordered one of each. When you check out, use the offer code PEACE15. That's PEACE15. PEACE15, and you will get 15% off your order. That's sugarcali.com, offer code PEACE15. Okay, Peaceniks, Peaceaholics. Thanks for listening to the show. Let's go down to the border with Chris Cauhape.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
Drugs are menacing our society.
What are your thoughts on the drug problem?
I had a great time doing drugs.
So tonight, from our family to yours, from our home to yours, thank you for joining us.
This is the Peace on Drugs.
So how's everything in Florida?
Everything's good down here. We've been busy, super, super busy for the last 2 years, basically. Where are you at?
Indio, California.
Okay.
It's where they have Coachella. You ever been to Coachella?
No.
Oh. I can hear it from my house.
You say Coachella, like the
Yeah.
music? Oh, yeah. No, I've actually always wanted to go out there, but we have Bonnaroo here and stuff similar. Well, not here, but that's the one that's in Tennessee, and that's the one that I've went to.
You're in Lauderdale? Are you in Lauderdale?
I'm right across from Lauderdale on the other coast in Fort Myers.
Oh, okay. I went to Florida once.
Yeah.
I went to, I'm the only native Southern California that's never been to Disneyland, but I've been to Disney World. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. I've never been to either one.
All right. You done me one better.
So I ordered your book, and then it something happened, and then I ordered it again, and it's not here yet. So you're my first author guest where I haven't had an opportunity to read your book. I'm gonna read it.
Keep on ordering. Yeah.
But I want to talk about it, and because of the subject matter, I think we'll be able to go right into it. But you can explain it to my guest. It's Parlor. First, how do you pronounce your last name?
Cauhape.
Got it. All right.
It's Catalan, not Spanish, not French. Catalan.
Gotcha. Okay.
How do you say? Aculas. Akula. I said it right. What kind of name is that?
That is Lithuanian. My family is German, French. German and Irish, English. But my uncle's side of the family is Lithuanian, and I took his last name because I'm a musician, so it was kind of a stage name. But also taught me music, and I kind of was a big role model in my life. So I used his last name, and that's kind of what I went with.
I was a radio announcer for a while. My air name was Criss Cross.
And then someone else stole it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because that was 73 when I did that, 1973.
The original Criss Cross. I'm going to have to put that on the podcast.
The original. Like Bad Bob, the original Bad Bob.
All right, great. So yeah, so also thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
Hey,
Glad that you're on here.
I've been waiting. I'm very glad to do something like this.
Very cool, very cool.
I'm a talkative sort.
You're what?
A talkative sort.
Oh, that's awesome. So your book is Parlor Whales.
Yes, it is.
And so tell me a little bit about it.
Well, people ask me, why did I write it? And I could just say, the short answer is because of 8 murders. I've had neighbors, employees, and relatives murdered in drug situations. I feel like I'm collateral damage in the war on drugs. I feel like I live on ground zero, which is along the border where I've lived all my life. It is ground zero in the drug war. It's really affected the border area more so than any other part of the country, I believe. Because when I was younger, I went to a college that was about 10 miles away from Mexicali. And we used to actually caravan to Mexicali to eat Chinese food. By the way, they have the best Chinese food on earth in Mexicali. We would caravan down across the border, eat lunch, and come back and finish up the school day. Take about 5 minutes across the border. Now it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 hours to come back across the border. And that's all because of this zero tolerance, which I've come to call 100% intolerance. It's just ruined the cross-border business there, plus, all the other things that go along with it.
Yeah, and it's destroying the country down there too. The whole country.
Oh man, it's night and day what it used to be, and all the violence in Mexico. I mean, hell, I've had violence around my house here. I've had then 300 yards of my house in the last since 19. I've lived here 50 years in this house. First 20 years was calm. The last 31 years have been had all in all 30 shootings, 8 dead. That's aside from the relatives and employees I was talking about. Had can't number the car burglaries we've had, attic theft. We've had 4 home invasions. The last one, a beer drinking buddy of mine, the invader pistol whipped his eye out. It's just, it's just.
Now, these people that are breaking in, are they drug seekers? These are people that can't afford their habits and are breaking in to steal things, or are they part of the drug gangs?
Well, no, they're more or less just addicts, getting money to give to the pusher man. Mm-hmm. So they can get their stuff. There's a methadone clinic within about a mile of here. We get a lot of traffic through, but that thing there, see, what I advocate is what, why give them methadone? It's just a replacement drug. Once they give them the real thing, give them heroin like they do in Switzerland. You heard about Switzerland?
Yep, the Switzerland program. As they said, the auto thefts went down 55%, violent crimes went down like 85%, and then drug dealing went down 95%. So
you know why drug dealing went down? Actually, the average age of the novice user went up by 5 years after 8 years of the program, and the instance of new addicts went down by 83%. And they just everything went better for them. And then England had right after World War I, England put their people that got addicted to heroin for pain during the war, put them on a prescription program. Just come to the chemist, they call them over there, and we'll fix you up with some heroin, whatever you need. And in 1948, when the national health system came on in England, they were given free heroin. By 1997, the United States kind of bullied them, I'd say, into switching over to American Prohibition style. At the time, all of the addicts in London, the number was 1,064 in 1971 when they went off the British system, as they called it. And by 1991, assaults were 6 times what they had been 20 years earlier. Burglary was 7 times what it had been. And the number of addicts went from 1,000 to 300,000. And that proves the point of my book. One of the whales in the parlor that no one wants to talk about. It's an actual fact that that drug abuse is actually more prevalent because of drug prohibition. And drug prohibition, like in Switzerland, the people that got in the program at first, they took the 7% of the hardcore people in the program into the HAT program. And multi-level marketing was invented in the illicit drug market about 30 years before Nutrilite and Amway and all those people got a hold of multi-level marketing. And the number of addicts in Switzerland after 1 year, it's about 90% of them quit dealing. They didn't have to deal. They were getting their 3 free jolts a day at the clinics.
Exactly, because they were dealing to pay for their habit, and they were willing to sell to underage kids, and that's where you get the age difference when older people start using, because younger kids they have nowhere to buy it.
Yeah, right. Plus, the multi-level marketing system is the reason that drugs have proliferated. What we had here when we started this thing back, this month it's 107 years that we've had national drug prohibition.
Since the Harrison Act?
Well, yeah. And the only reliable census of drug abusers was done by a fella named Martin Wilbert in Pharmaceutical Journal. He actually used scientific method. All of the other estimates you hear about it, what the addict population was in 1915, they're all mostly yellow journalists' estimates. But this guy actually took the imported stuff, because heroin, opium and cocaine were
imported.
I'm sorry. Yeah, imported, and they actually had the only people, there weren't any illicit labs making anything out of this stuff. It all came from the pharmaceuticals. And, just you got an pretty accurate idea of how many addicts there were in the country, and it came out to about 250,000. The Center for Disease Controls puts that number at 32 million now.
Wow.
We've got 128 times what we had when we started this thing, with only 3.5 times as many people. And as far as kids are concerned, we only have twice as many kids nowadays, because families have gotten smaller in the last 100 years. But I saw an estimate from a fellow that was a chief surgeon at San Quentin prison for 50 years, from 1912 to 1950. And he did a survey of addicts right in 1914, 15, 16. He did this survey, and 99% of the people who were addicts in San Quentin prison at that time started using it at above age 15. And you know about the Monitoring the Future survey that the University of Michigan takes?
No.
Oh, every year they survey. Well, since 1975, they've been University of Michigan, in conjunction with the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Since 75, they've been monitoring high school students as to drug use. And since 1991, they started with 8th graders. Well, in 2019, the survey came out that 20.4% of the 8th graders had already abused an illicit drug in their lifetime. And that's not including alcohol, tobacco, or inhalants. 20.4%. You took the population of the children that were born in 2004, I believe it was. Well, it's been pretty constant, a little over 4 million. That year, the year that made those kids 14 was live births, according to the vital statistics, was 4,266,000. If you multiply that times 20%, you come out with 870,000 kids using. Now that's about 350 times as many as what we're using it back in 1915. So I would just say that maybe drug prohibition actually causes drug abuse.
Well, the things that could cause drug abuse would be, the problems that we're having with globalization and the job loss. But the thing is the availability of drugs for kids is what's changed. So when they're feeling pain and their families are struggling, they're able to go out on the street and score these drugs that wouldn't be there if they were controlled and regulated. Go ahead.
If they wouldn't be there if they were the same prices, if they didn't have the inflated price because of the prohibition. I found out when Bayer introduced heroin and aspirin, they introduced them both in 3 weeks apart in the winter of 1897 and 1898. They both used the acetylization process to make the product out of them. So they both came out at the same time. They both sold for the same price, which was 8 doses for a penny. You can still buy an aspirin for a penny in this country. You can buy an adult 325 milligram aspirin tablet for 1 cent. Heroin's a 50 milligram bag here goes for $10. Be like going to the grocery store and buying a loaf of plain white bread, and the clerk would want to charge you $14,000 for that with that kind of a markup.
That's crazy.
Of course, it's getting that way anyway, it seems like.
I know, everything's going up. It's crazy.
And then they want to sell you a bag here in California. They make more money selling people plastic bags at the supermarkets.
Yeah, they've sold us bags too.
Yeah, but if they get that price back down to where it's on par with aspirin, I mean, who in the hell would want to sell it?
Exactly. And that's one thing the doctors warned when Harry Anslinger was first criminalizing the heroin and stopping doctors from being able to prescribe to addicts. They said, well, they're going to have to go to the streets and the markup's going to go up to where they can't afford it. And they're going to start committing crimes to be able to afford their addictions. And all of that came true immediately as soon as they pushed them to the black market.
Yeah, it just, the reason there wasn't a big proliferation right after the Harrison Act was because right away 1917, 2 years later, we got into World War I. Got out of that the year after that. And then it was the roaring 20s, but then the end of 20s, we hit that Great Depression. Then World War II, Korean War. I'll tell you, I was in college when the GI Bill, Vietnam GI Bill, started sending checks out to veterans. That's where the drug exposure. I call it the big bong. Essentially the war on drugs was lost November 1st, 1955. That was the day that Dwight David Eisenhower, President of the United States, sent the first troops into Vietnam after the French had left because they lost. Took another 30 years to get us 20 years to get us out of there. But I was in college, and I was a child of the Reefer Madness. There was a couple other movies that came out in the 50s. High School Confidential. You ever hear that one?
No.
Yeah, well, it had Jerry Lee Lewis was a rock star. I had him playing the piano on a flatbed truck coming into this hip school about 1958 or so. Well, these kids all got into drugs, and they're just as stupid as Reefer Madness. And then the other one was Cool and the Crazy, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's more deserving of ridicule than the Reefer Madness. But I was a child of that mindset. And there I am seeing these guys come back from Vietnam. They're saying, hey, you know what I did over there in Nam? You know what, man, I was smoking marijuana. Oh, yeah, smoking marijuana. And yeah, you know, you're going to end up taking heroin. You're going to end up in the baloney, man. That's, you know, that's not true, man. And, you know, after a while, they convinced a lot of their classmates, you know, because you get curious about something like that. And then you go and take it. If it works out for you, you know, hell, go home, show little brother that's in high school, hey, look what this stuff is. That's bad, you know. Well, I grew up on the border, you know, and it was a little different down there. There was quite a bit of, in fact, you know, Cher, the singer actress, she was born in El Centro down on the border. And come to find out, her father was a heroin addict, truck driving heroin addict. And why in the hell would anybody come to El Centro in 1946? You know, well, the reason was because it was a lot easier to score your dope in Imperial Valley in those days than it was like in a city. Plus, there were some towns in Imperial Valley at that time that were just wide open. Say there wasn't much. I remember I was a little kid. You know, little kids are fascinated with snakes. And I could read the newspaper when I was 8, and I saw down there Imperial County Sheriff bus open opium den. I thought, oh man, opium. Oh man, Mom, what kind of a snake is an opium? You know? I thought it had to do with snakes, but yeah, they finally cleaned it up about 1954. But yeah, the guys coming back in from Nam were the ones that set off the drug explosion in the 1960s. That was the big bong, because it wasn't as prevalent. I mean, it was unheard of.
So it was also though there was the acid explosion in San Francisco Bay Area, correct?
Right.
That was about the same time.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and that started with a pretty peaceful movement with hippies wanting to do acid, but then in the CIA with MK Ultra was trying out all these other drugs, but amphetamines became very popular, and then the whole peace and love turned into some shady, people were selling drugs and stealing from each other, and that's what the government wanted, was break up the peace and love movement. They're anti-war. We don't want that. They were. It hadn't changed much.
You know, they don't want anybody, you know, stepping out of line. You know, you can't step out of line.
Exactly.
But the psychedelic thing, that was actually that was legal for a while until they saw. But they did another Reefer Madness on that thing. You take that LSD and you'll stare at the sun till you go blind.
Oh, I know. And then there's old shows. I was watching one where the detective was interviewing a Timothy Leary type character, and it was he's like, your books are telling people to eat LSD. He's like, it'll open their minds. And they were having a debate. And he's like, what about the kid who ripped out his own eyeballs to stare at his own face? And he's like, the reality he saw then is bigger than anything he'll see in this reality. It's like, that kind of stuff never happened, and you're making it sound like it's a legit debate that's going on. Nobody would defend someone ripping their eyeballs out, and nobody would rip out their eyeballs. But these are the stories that they were putting in the pop culture to like scare kids. I was scared of LSD before I did it. I was like, this stuff is, you know, it's going to make me go crazy. I could go crazy for the rest of my life, which there's sort of some evidence that possibly if you're a schizophrenic, have that gene, it could happen. But for the most part, I mean, These are all just government lies. And it's like they should have an honest discussion. Drugs are not completely safe. They are dangerous. They can ruin lives, but have an honest debate. Don't tell us a bunch of stuff that's not true, because then we're going to have to go try to find out for ourselves.
Well, nowadays, the truth is hard to find. Seems like very hard to find. But, the problem with drugs, like one of my little catchphrase, right? In fact, on the front of the book, it says, now is the time to drop the Tranquility Bomb. That's how you're going to have peace on. The only way you can have peace on drugs is by dropping the Tranquility Bomb.
Okay. How do we do that?
Yeah. The Tranquility Bomb consists of course, decriminalization and universally medicalized maintenance, like they do in Switzerland, which is now done in Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, Canada. I mean, it's catching on. But and research. The most important thing is research. In fact, let me read you an excerpt from the book here. It says, there has been no improvement in addiction treatment since Alcoholics Anonymous came on the scene in the 1930s. It is extremely likely that traditional Chinese medicine as practiced 200 years ago was more effective at addressing addiction than the predominant therapies of the 21st century. Hey, did you hear about Dr. Cervelli's findings at UC Irvine?
No.
Last October. They've actually, I've got this stuff here is an ancient Chinese medicine, like I wrote about in the book 2 years ago when I wrote it. It's called, the Chinese call it Yan Hu Suo. When co-administered with morphine, according to this Dr. Cervelli's paper that he put in the Pharmaceutical Journal, when co-administered with any kind of an opiate, it prevents the body becoming tolerant. So in other words, you can get the same bang for the buck out of codeine, heroin, morphine, whatever kind of an opiate you use with this.
Without the tolerance.
With this Cordalis stuff. I think you can buy this at Walmart.
Cordalis. Cordalis.
That's it. Yeah, look it up on the computer there.
I'm gonna research that. That's extremely interesting, and that's because that's the biggest problem. People use the drugs to ease their pain, and that high helps them escape from whatever troubles they're having, or sometimes they just enjoy the way it feels. But then the problem is they start doing it too much, and then they have to have it, and that's where the struggle.
They have to increase the dose.
Yeah, that too.
Keep them at the same. They can actually wean people off. Another research thing, 2016, up in the University of British Columbia at Vancouver, they genetically engineered some mice with the intention of making them more prone to addiction. Well, they screwed up. They got a little litter of mice that came out impervious to cocaine addiction.
Really?
You hear about that one?
No.
Yeah, that's the University of Vancouver. You can look that one up. University of British Columbia at Vancouver. And I forget the doctor's name. Oh, God. But anyway, that was 2016. Actually, the National Institute of Health, which loans all the money for this research, they're just so damn stingy when it comes to anything that has to do with addiction. Of course, they're pretty much the puppet of the pharmaceutical industry, which sees no dollar signs when they think about addiction medicine. It's like
they did see dollar signs when they were prescribing OxyContin, and and so they should go back to prescribing that or something like that to addicts and use that. Like they could make money on it if they were to do it the right way.
Well, it's my contention that we should just divert all the money out of that they were using on this cops and dopers game they've been playing for how long?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. When are they going to realize that it
$58 billion a year, every year, and it doesn't work? We have more addiction problems than ever. And that's what I brought up on my podcast is how much money would the American people be comfortable spending if, let's say, $1 trillion would fix it? Would you be, versus we could just not spend the money and treat addiction and have that problem solved immediately?
Well, the thing is that it's an actual biological. It's not a psychological disease. It was discovered in 1990, the DRD2 1A variation gene by UCLA Psychiatric discovered that, and they found it to be present in 60% of the addict population, yet only 10% of the general population. That was 1990. They've discovered dozens of other genes that are responsible for different types of addiction. Let me read you the other I'm only going to read two. It's talking about tough love. The tough love theory assumes that addiction is a selection. It is not. It is a compulsion. Addiction is an anatomical disease that occurs in genetically predisposed individuals. Addiction is triggered when an individual is matched up with a substance determined by that particular individual's genetics to cause immense pleasure and uncontrollable craving in that specific individual. It is anatomical because those genes are present in every cell in the body. It's an anatomical disease. Those who think it's evil, this debate of, is it a disease? It's a disease, It's
exactly. If somebody couldn't work because they had a health issue that like MS or something, you wouldn't yell at them and tell them to get a job.
Yeah. Then you get into I'm pretty active by a city here. I've run for city council a couple times. Thank God I never won. Actually, I got into a blue ribbon panel to figure out how to fix the streets were in disrepair here in this city. So I got the city clerk to go get into the archives there and get a pie chart of 1960 is the year I used because that was the year of the federal census, and that was pre-Bong. That was before the soldiers came back and turned everybody on. But our city here, $1 and $7 was spent on street maintenance and repair. And by 1997, which was the year I was on the panel, it with the linear mileage had tripled. We had 1960, we had 50 linear miles of street. By 1997, we had 150. Yet the percentage of street maintenance repair money in the general fund budget was $1 in $200 as opposed to $1 in $5 or $1 in $7. So I thought, man, this is crazy. I have to go back and see what the difference is. Well, I found it. Guess what it was?
What's that?
Police expenditures.
Wow.
Police expenditures was $1 in $5 when street maintenance was $1 in $7. By 1997, it was $3 out of $5.
Wow.
So I said, boy, that's interesting. I wonder if that's true in any other cities. I called the archivist in the city of Los Angeles. Their percentage in 1960 was 11%. And 2019, it was 43%, 4 times as much. And you drive around Los Angeles, there's a few potholes in that big city, but it's just about the same any place. We're getting to spend too much money, and the local politicians depend on endorsement by the Police Officers Association. To keep so the local politicians, they keep on giving them raises and raises until they're 60% of the general fund budget.
Yeah, and see, that's where I supported the defund the police movement in that we need to defund the certain aspects of the police movement, basically the drug war. But when you call it defund the police, it immediately angers people that don't understand what they're talking about. It's like, we're not saying stop paying police officers. No, we need police officers, but we don't need them kicking in doors in SWAT gear for a war on drugs that can't be won. And that's where a lot of that money goes is stuff like that. All these, we've militarized the police. They have all these weapons. Some of them have, helicopters and, flash grenade launchers, crazy stuff.
Yeah. It's come to the point where, like here, they've made all these cities are dependent on big box stores and then high retail sales to augment their tax base so they can pay for the police force. We don't need to defund the police. We need to get rid of these stupid laws that cost so much money and make things worse. It's made it worse. Why do we have 128 times as many drug addicts as we had? Because we bought all these police, bought them all their gadgets and gizmos. And then you get into the forfeiture. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, that's actually, I don't know how the Supreme Court allowed that to happen. That's a complete violation of what our country stands for. Well, they can take stuff and they don't even have to take it for drugs. They can say it's for drugs and you have to prove it wasn't for drugs. And a lot of people are too poor and the cost of a lawyer is not worth what their car was worth. So they're just going to let the government keep it.
Yeah. Well, you know what happens to that money? Actually, there was a white paper done on this, or actually it was part of the law that 6% of that money has to go to victims of crime. Now the Arellano Felix brothers, Tijuana Cartel, when they caught them, they got two brothers $50 million each for with a profit with the asset forfeiture, and then the other brother was 100 million. And then when the guy that put the finger on El Chapo Guzman, Zambada from Sinaloa, Zambada, his part of his agreement, he forfeited the $1.37 billion. And the DEA operates on $3 billion a year. That was half of their Yet they only returned 6% of the victims of crime. There's been 300,000 people at least murdered in Mexico over this baloney that's been going on for 107 years. I had an employee that was murdered by Arellano Felix Tijuana drug cartel down in Mexicali. I had an employee that was tortured and murdered over there. It ended up being a quintuple homicide. He was with another fellow that there's a dry lake south of Mexicali, and a lot of people go out there and run their four wheels, Baja 500 and all that kind of thing. But this cat, he saw a plane go down, and he rushed over there. And the pilot was dead, but he saw he had some packages and his light bulb went on. Bing! Well, I know what that is. I can sell that. And he threw it in his pickup. He's running around Mexicali trying to sell that. Well, Mexicali's only 2 hours out of Tijuana. It's kind of like, there's a lot of interaction between the two cities.
Right. So they figured out that he got it.
Arellano Felix finally caught up with this guy. My employee was with him, along with two young ladies. They torched the car with two young ladies in there. They were machine gunned to death. The two guys were tortured. And then the fellow that found the bodies about a month later, he was also murdered. Wow. And the family, they're collecting $1.5 billion from all them. What do they get for losing, 3 innocent people? 4 would count the guy.
6% of a take goes to the victims of these things. And let me ask you this one.
That is what I call tyranny in its purest form. They're sending out purse snatchers, strong arm robbers to collect taxes to pay for the police force. That's tyranny, man.
Yeah.
I want my tax collector to have IRS written on his badge. You know, I don't want some purse snatcher. I got knocked over in the street right out here by a couple of thugs right out front of my street there. But I got like a photographic memory as they did a U-turn to get back to the main drag there. I got their license plate. Well, they caught them. 2 FWC 346. That happened in 1991. I still haven't forgot the plate. But the guy had just gotten out of prison and had embezzled his mother's car. He wasn't supposed to have it, but he ended up doing 3 years for what he did to me. You know, I never got a penny out of that thing. I've lost about $10,000 in attic theft over the years. I didn't get anything for that, man. Where's my cut? You're taking this money away from these guys that are supposed to be criminals and drug dealers and all this. You're supposed to give 6% to the victims. Where is it?
Yeah, they say they use it to continue the fight against fighting the drug war. But the truth is, and we all know the truth, is that the DEA doesn't want to win a war that would put them out of business.
Nope, absolutely. The DEA would be DOA, you know, which it should be.
Yep.
It's a worthless. It doesn't. It makes the problem worse.
It does. And also, I was reading something that said that when they take a lot of these seizures of these big properties, they'll actually negotiate with the higher ups in the drug cartels, and basically it gets them out of a prison sentence. Like, well, you won't do prison if you forfeit this much. But the young people who are just trying to feed their families, they're going to spend a lot of time in prison. But the people who are making the money, they're going to avoid prison by just giving the DEA a cut of the drug sales. It's basically what we're talking about here. They're getting a cut from what they're fighting.
Yeah, it's the old kingpin, queen pin, prince pin. You know that the kingpin never gets burnt, man. It's always the lieutenant down there. I'll turn in all my lieutenants. I talked to a judge here. He said there was a plane going to the airport out here, nosedived into the airport. Everybody was safe, but there was a couple of pretty well thought of people, including a guy that was a pastor of a church up in Riverside. He had a load of marijuana in those mists back in the 60s, I guess. But they all got off the hook, according to this judge. He said they turned in all their lieutenants. They did the time, and these guys got a slap on the wrist and got scared a little bit. That's all.
Wow.
Keep on keeping on.
That's crazy. And
it's just so much corruption there. I mean, it's just.
And that's what you're going to get when there's an illegal trade. It's all going to be corruption. That's how it's going to run.
And what we've done to Latin America is just, it's not a bad neighbor policy. It's just plain evil what we've done to them, and then we blame them.
I know.
Blame them.
We call them criminals and rapists.
Rapists and drug dealers. I'm quoting a fella.
Yeah. It's actually really awful. And I feel like what we did, I mean, we strong on them into creating the black market there. They didn't want to outlaw drugs because they saw the way, Prohibition worked with us. So like, we don't want that shit. Yep. Well, then we're not going to allow you to have opioids from our pharmaceutical companies are going to stop shipment from opioids to your hospitals if you don't outlaw them. So they folded because everybody in the hospitals needed this medicine. They outlawed it, and then immediately everything that they said would happen happened. And now their country is completely in disarray. It was in like 2000 and I think it was 18 that the statistic was 33,000 murders in Mexico that year, and most of these are drug related. And then when they start trying to exile some of these countries that are being flooded by a drug chain coming from from South America up through Mexico, refugees are trying to come up here. We're like, build a wall, keep them out. It's like we created this problem. And also, why?
Absolutely.
And why is the cartel so profitable? Because Americans want to buy drugs, and we make guns, and we sell them guns. So they could want to put a wall against us to stop our money and guns from coming down there. So we need to fix this problem and help them resolve this, not build a wall.
We need to find a cure, and here it is. And they said, you know what? Nobody's heard of this. It's been since October 12th. That's November, December, January. 5 months. 5 months, and nobody's heard about this.
Corey Dallas. Crazy. I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna research that.
And the doctor, I've talked to some other guys, the Scripps Institute. There's a Scripps Institute in Florida. What city is that in?
What is it called?
Scripps Institute. They do research.
I'm not sure. It's probably it could be in any one of the colleges, honestly.
Well, there's the famous one is out here in San Diego. They're connected with the one in Florida. They came up with a methamphetamine, PCP, and cocaine vaccine. Scripps Institute did in 1999. They haven't had the money. They haven't gotten the money out of the National Institutes of Health to do human trials in 23 years. Heroin, and in 2013, they came up with a heroin vaccine. Same story, and plus no press, no media. It's like a secret. Look those up.
I'm gonna look those up.
The doctor's name is Janda, Janda.
What is it? Janda.
Janda. First name Kim. And the other doctor that was Dr. Koob, Koob, in 1999. I met him. We actually spend $1.5 million a year on drug sniffing dogs, and we spend $2.5 million a year on drug screening. And we spend less than a billion. I did say billion, right? We spend less than $1 billion on research. For every dollar we spend on research, we spend $4 on sniffer dogs and drug screening.
That's absolutely awful. And another thing about the research is, from what my understanding is, any research that's done that doesn't go in line with exactly what the government wants to say is not going to happen. Like there was that rat experiment where they got rats addicted to cocaine and heroin, and that was funded by the government. And then somebody else created Rat Palace to show that if you give the rats other things to do other than just drugs, you get other rats that they can mate with and you have things they can play with, they're not going to get addicted. But that kind of research would never get funded. The government wants nothing to do with it. We want to only prove one thing. They have an area.
Like the study to try and show that marijuana was equal to tobacco and lung cancer, and they found out if you smoke marijuana and tobacco, that your chances of getting cancer were less than if you only smoked tobacco. I mean, how many people heard about that now? I mean, they're parlor whales. They keep that thing. It's a big old rotting whale in the parlor that nobody wants to talk about. These things need to be talked about.
Yes, they do. And that's the thing. Every time that they would try to put millions of dollars into research to prove the harmful effects of cannabis, every single time they would come back with nothing. And then they would just shut down the research. They would, we did find some positive things. Like, no, we're ending funding. We don't want positive things. Well, it cures this. It does this. No. And the idea that it's been a Schedule I substance since 1970, meaning it has no medicinal purpose, is just ridiculous.
Hell, I had prostate cancer here, a few years back. I took the radiation thing, and I was taking that black tar marijuana, that THC, like 30 milligrams. Well, that cured me of prostate cancer, man.
Really?
That and the radiation. I mean, it's been a medicine for like this stuff. They're gonna outlaw this now, man. Oh man, it's too easy. It's too easy on people. Let's make life hard for people, man. They make it. See, everybody's a victim in this damn drug war. You don't realize you're like, my wife and I went and bought an SUV here January. We paid $3,100 in taxes. I figured out the sales tax. The pre-bong 1960 sales tax would have saved us $2,000 on that price. So where's that extra $2,000? Goes to your police force here. Got to handle. They got to go play cops and dopers. When I was a kid, we played cops and robbers. Now they play cops and dopers.
That's a good point. And the thing is, robbers were something worth actually going after, somebody that was violent crime. Now we're going after people because people want to get high. And And again, I think though that the big point that we have to have with people who are pro-prohibition is that we want the same thing as prohibitionists. We want less people addicted. We want less people overdosing. We want less crime. We want to pay less taxes. These are all things that will happen if we end drug prohibition.
Yeah, that's it. On overdose, the Swiss thing, 28 years now, zero overdose deaths, zero.
It's the same reason. Yeah, the same reason we don't have overdose in hospitals that use morphine, because if it's controlled and regulated doses, it doesn't kill people. It's actually pretty safe. It's actually safer than alcohol. But they don't want to tell people that. They don't want people to know that.
Yeah, the other thing is like the Taliban. You know, the Taliban. George W. Bush in May of 2001. That was what, four months before 9/11. They, for their participation in burning down opium fields, he gave them $43 million worth of surplus wheat that we had. He rewarded the Taliban for burning poppy fields, which they later found out had already been harvested.
Of course they had.
Yeah. And I just can't help that, but think that, you know, those 19 box cutters that Muhammad Atta and all his pals bought to take those planes down on 9/11, and that was paid for by our surplus wheat that we gave the Taliban. But the big one is this guy in this little sweetheart that lives in North Korea that's doing all this noise with these bombs and stuff. You know where he got the money to do that?
Where's that?
It's in the congressional record. North Korea. They're exploding all these bombs now. They got the money. They had the world's only methamphetamine, heroin, state-run by North Korea, heroin and methamphetamine business. It was responsible for 60% of their export income. That's where they built these bombs. And they exploded the first one, I think it was 2007. And they backed off on, because they actually were growing opium where they should have been growing cabbage for their people. They were growing opium, can't eat that stuff. You know, it's not very nutritious. But they quit doing it, and then when the old man died and this new young guy took over, he reprised the business. And we got to go back in the heroin, methamphetamine business. They're busting them in Australia and Indonesia. All just, you know, everything in North Korea is owned by the state.
I wonder how long it'll take them if they're not already moving on to fentanyl production, because China's has made a large percentage of the world's fentanyl came from China. Some of it was just precursor chemicals that went to Mexico and then they made it there. But there's so much money to be made in fentanyl because it's so much easier to ship in smaller packages. And that's what's killing us now.
But I can't understand why they want to kill their customers. You know,
it's not. I don't think they want to kill their customers. If they get the dose, again, fentanyl is actually a safe drug if the dosage is right. They use it in hospitals, but the problem is it's so potent that you if somebody buys it from the cartels and doesn't know how to cut it correctly, which happens constantly. But there's also this thing that some people their addictions have gotten so out of control that they need something super potent to feel it. So when they hear something killed somebody, they go, "Oh, that's the good stuff," and they want to go get it. Yep.
Yeah, it's just you know, what they've done in Guatemala, Salvador, and which is the other, Honduras. They you know, their combined gross national products only 125 billion, and they see 100 and some. Our consumption here in this country is 150 billion. And, you know, maybe 100 billion of it comes through the Central America there. You know, they're piecing off all the cops and the generals and the politicians. They're de facto narco states. And the people that are showing up on the border, they're narco refugees. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people from Mexico and from my next door neighbors from Honduras. And, you know, life's just terrible over there because of this. You know, if you got a nice looking daughter, they go and knock on your door. Hey, mister, man, you know, we want your daughter for the casa de cita over here. You know what a casa de cita is. You know, then you go to the cops and say, hey, you know, this gang guy came by, he wants my daughter for the prostitution over there. And he said, hey, you know what? My hands are tied, man. These guys are paying me more than what your government's paying me for this job. You know, I got two masters I'm serving here. I got to serve the one that's paying me better.
Also, the one that will probably, you know, commit violence and kill you and your family if you don't play ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the one thing I've talked about. I've been following people on Twitter. We've been talking about this. Is that that the human trafficking is a side hustle from drug cartels. If you cut off the drug money, that business would go away, and it'll be a lot easier to fight that business because you wouldn't be able to pay off law enforcement if you didn't have drug money.
Absolutely. You start draining. You make that pool of money zero where the cops aren't getting their bite. They're going to start arresting guys that are doing bad stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's no money to buy them off, man. You know. So, and then they're going to take revenge on the guys that stepped over the line before they dropped the Tranquility Bomb on them. You know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they can straighten that thing out. You know, Pierre Trudeau was the daddy of this guy that's prime minister of our neighbor up north, and he said living with you're sleeping with the elephant, you know, and he was telling about, you know, it's fine unless they roll over at night, you know. Well, you know, it happens in spades, and we've been treating Latin America like it was another part of the galaxy since day one, and it's about time we treated them with some brotherly action rather than, you know, stern fatherly action, letting their countries, you know, deteriorate because of our habit here. And
exactly,
the real addiction is the law enforcement addiction to getting all these big salaries, and the cops get jaded after they're on the job for about 5 years. You ought to limit it to 5 years, you know. And they, you know, I've got relatives that are cops, you know, and I've seen it in them how they change, and they become, you know, they're not pretty people after a few years after they're in that business. And it's just a damn shame that we can't see through that. You know, we need to solve the problem, not make the problem worse. You know, it's like they've been using a fire extinguisher on this thing, and come to find out the fire extinguisher is full of gasoline.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, metaphor. It's exactly, we need to solve the problem. That's what we have to do, is start paying attention to science. That's what Portugal did.
Absolutely.
So we got to look at the data, see what works. Don't just say, well, it's got to work if we keep fighting it. Well, has it worked in 100 years? For 50 years since the Controlled Substance Act? What we saw with prohibition of alcohol, and how long was that? Was that like a 12 years? 13 years.
Yeah.
And so we saw how bad that happened. Well, now we've had a drug war for 50 years, and it's that much worse than alcohol prohibition. If we, you know, alcohol prohibition would have gotten that bad if we let it go on as long. You would have had human trafficking, 33,000 murders in one country from drug cartels. This is real life people are living down there. That's so tragic.
Yeah. My father-in-law was living down there, man. He had to make a little fortress around where he lived there, because the neighborhood was just, you know, Mexico's just not the same as it was when I was a kid, man. I used to cross that border 10,000 times in my life, man, and I used to feel, oh man, it was more peaceful over there. Boy, not anymore, man. It's sad deal. They just we do that to our neighbors, you know, treat them like that. It's and we got a whole mindset on this build the wall.
I know. I live where I live in Florida. It's there's like billboards that people put up that are like, build that wall, and it's like I live in a really I don't know, just red area, and it's just flags everywhere, and it just bothers me, but it's just everywhere. It's the point where I almost want to move, but this is where my work is.
Yeah, see, those people are anti-science.
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah, it's just that's not You got to take a scientific approach to this. I mean, the science proves that it's not a character flaw to be an addict. You know, the science proves that it's an anatomical disease. Why don't we put some money into research? I mean, we're just on the verge. We're on the verge of solving the problem here with this Cordalis stuff and the research up in Canada and the stuff that's being done at Scripps in Florida. There's a lady that runs that. Well, she's down on a lot of stuff there that you might want to look her up if you get the
Scripps in Florida. I wrote that down.
Yeah, and it's yeah, it's just you know, and they like, if you think about what about methamphetamine maintenance, like they do heroin maintenance, you know, that seems a little iffy there, you know, because, but you know, has anybody ever scientifically explored the possibility of doing that?
Well, actually methamphetamine is prescribed to some people for certain conditions, but in pill form. It's when you smoke it, it's a different thing. I guess probably the same, you know, crack versus cocaine, same drug, but a different effect when it's smoked or snorted. But again, we look at the science, right? Is there going to be meth clinics? I don't know. I feel like we can get people off meth easier than heroin.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like, but that's where we go to our scientists. Don't go to our law enforcement. Go to our scientists and say, how do we get people? I mean, but that's the thing. We've turned our scientists basically into healthcare workers, and they're not. They're there to protect. It should be serve and protect is their motto. Well, that's not what they've been doing.
No, take and take and retire. Yeah, live the good life. 20 years and the good life. Become a double dipper. It's that bureaucratic mentality of dipping. Dip. I'm glad my wife was a bureaucrat because her retirement's what keeps us going. I was out there pounding nails and doing whatever I could. And, you know, nothing more than Social Security, and that's a little skimpy, especially when I go. Gas is like $5 here now.
Is that just recently from the Ukraine thing?
Yeah.
Ours is up to 4 right now.
Yeah, that we really need to get into the research business, and it's you know, it's always proven to, you know, take the March of Dimes, man. That President Roosevelt got the ball rolling on that in 1927. He called it the Florida, or no, is it Georgia? The Georgia Foundation. Anyway, when he got to be president, he said, well, we'll do a different approach. And they came up with the March of Dimes. That was in 1938. By 1953, they already, Salk had already come up with a vaccine for it, but it hadn't been human trial. You know, it took, by the time the first shots came, I was a little kid, man. I was eager to get that vaccine because that's what they used to scare us, man. Oh, that thing, don't do that. That thing's been in the polio, man. You catch that damn polio. They scare the hell out of it. You see people all withered and with braces on, and you know, it's gonna be a happy day when they do come up with the cure, man. It's gonna change the whole world, man. It's gonna, you know, they're not gonna have this money to be building atomic bombs, and you know, there's not going to be a lot of, you know, a lot of the stuff that goes on behind getting money to supply, keep from getting sick, man. I mean, it's just like here in my neighborhood, it's not, you know, you drive by, it looks like a nice normal neighborhood, man, but I've been chronicling this stuff for what's happening. It's just, you know, and then the cops get so jaded, man, that you know, that they do this profiling. California, you have to wear a helmet to ride a bicycle. A lot of the guys that go to the methadone clinic, they're riding bicycles. That's a profile now. If you see a guy that's over 18 riding a bike, pull him over and see if he's got anything on him. You know, it's just, yeah, it's to do that. I'd be ashamed of myself.
Exactly.
The cop and had to do something like that. That's not brotherly, man. That's
and there wasn't supposed to be a drug exception to the Fourth Amendment. You can't just stop and search.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. They'll say, "Oh, traffic. If you have a taillight out, that's reason for me to stop you." And they have to ask. But ask could simply be, "Can I search your car?" If they say no, they can say, "Well, I have a drug dog." Drug dog walks around. All right, now we're searching. That's an illegal search. I don't care which way you look at it. But the Supreme Court, there's been many state cases where the states have said that was unconstitutional and threw out the case. And then the Supreme Court brought the case back and said it was constitutional because it was a drug case. And it's like the Supreme Court has dropped the ball so across the board throughout this whole drug war.
There was a study done in Australia that came out with the sniffer dogs only 26% correct. So they're missing on 74% of the stuff. So it's not an absolute thing.
No,
but that was a scientific study. So we have to, we can't pay any attention to science.
No, we don't like science because it goes against what we're trying to do here. And we're trying to do is get as many people as arrested, get those paychecks.
Yeah.
I got arrested we're talking about music festivals when we started. I got arrested on the way to Bonnaroo because I didn't know that these small town cops would pull over people who rented RVs on the highway at night because they knew they were going to a music festival. So they pulled us over, asked if they could search. We said no. They had a drug dog. Drug dog walked around. Now, it didn't bark or anything. I don't know what the signal is, but they said he smelled something. They went in, tore our place to pieces. I had a little bit of pot on me. That's all I had because at the time I didn't really smoke much, but I was like, it's a festival. I'll bring a little bit of pot. That way I can smoke a joint or something.
Come to California, man.
I know. Well, see, we have medicinal now.
Yeah.
And, but I've been denied because of my marijuana charges. I've been denied apartments before. And I was looking for an apartment. And it's like, so I can't get an apartment for something I have a medical prescription for now.
See here, Aaron. See what you did to yourself. I mean, the other thing here in California, back in 1960, we had 7 California units, University of California, Berkeley, UCLA, those. And we had 9 prisons. We ran 9 prisons on $40 million budget, 16,000 prisoners, $40 million budget. You know what our prison budget is this year? Just take a wild stab.
A wild stab, I would say it's probably, $1 billion now?
$17 billion.
Wow.
$17 billion. We, in 1960, for every dollar we spent on corrections, we spent 80 cents at the UC, 7 UC universities at that time. Now it's for every dollar we spend on UC students, we spend $13 locking guys up. And as a result, they get these huge, student loans. My son graduated from UC San Bernardino, or Cal State San Bernardino in 1991. He's 23 years old. He's not going to finish paying his student loans till he's 56 years old. That's child abuse, man. That's child abuse. What we charge these kids money, and who ends up with all the money? The banks. Look at the skyline on Miami, man. Before the bong, there wasn't much high rise there, man. Just watch that movie Goldfinger. The tallest building in Miami was that Hotel Tropicana, I think it was. That Miami Vice money that came in there in the 80s, man. All that money ended up in the banks, man. They're bringing it in duffel bag. Who benefited from it? The banks. And who they make it pay for it? Here in California, it's the students.
Yeah, it's
students pay. You're going to pay for it. They're deferring buying a house, which houses are out of sight anyway. Deferring marriage, deferring having kids because of that. Because they had to lock up their brothers and they had to pay for their brothers to be locked up. Now we have 10 universities. I went to the dedication of the 10th when Schwarzenegger was governor. It was in 2005. We hadn't built a new UC campus since Irvine and Santa Cruz 40 years prior to that. And those intervening 40 years between the 3 colleges, we built 22 state prisons, 22 state prisons. That's why we're spending $17 billion. That might, that's just too much money.
Also, you have this huge homeless problem, and they cut so much funding for homeless for helping the homeless, and then they built prisons instead. And I think Clinton actually passed one of those bills where it was like, we're going to cut public housing by this much, and then we're going to add even more money than we cut from that to build prisons. And, with this Ukraine thing, you hear the word oligarch a lot now. And I'm thinking like, well, how is our billionaires not oligarchs? I mean, they're billionaires with huge political influence, and they do. And what? Sorry about that. That's weird. But these, they have all this political influence, and a lot of them have invested money in prisons. So if you start rolling back the drug war, they're going to lose money, and they're not going to stand for that.
Yeah, but the homeless, the homeless are 80% of crime, and 80% of the crimes due to substance abuse, 10% of the crimes due to mental illness. So the other 10%, that's all we need jails for, because mental illness is a disease. It's a genetic disease for the most part. Addiction is about 75% of genetic disease. We need to get busy and find cures for those things. Like in Switzerland, when they took these guys in and started giving them 3 fixes a day for nothing, they found places to live. They found jobs. I mean,
exactly. And the conservatives, because it's a very conservative country, they were anti this heroin policy at first. Now they're all for it.
Something funny about Switzerland? They didn't give women suffrage till 1972.
Wow.
Women couldn't vote before 1972, man.
That's crazy.
They haven't fought a war. The last time they fought a war, their opponent was named Julius Caesar. Pretty smart people there, I think.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I'm gonna I guess we can wrap it up here, but it was really great talking with you and having you on.
Hey,
Parlor Whales, buy it on Amazon right now.
If you don't get it today, order it again. If you don't get it tomorrow, order it again.
All right. I'm looking forward to reading it. And after I read it, I'll reach out to you. Maybe we can have you back on.
Yeah. It's Dorrance Publishing, Dorrance.
Do you recommend ordering it directly from the publisher for my listeners?
Yeah, I get a bigger chunk of it if you order it from the publisher.
Done. All right. Dorrance.
Hey, Aaron, man. I appreciate the... Oh, by the way, I'm having a book signing at Reuben's Ranch. Look that one up on the. He's a fellow that has after concert parties for the stars at Coachella.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Look that up, Reuben's Ranch in Coachella. Yeah, that's where I'm having a book sign. Anybody that's in Southern California, look up Reuben's Ranch, and on March 19th, 6 p.m. come over there and buy a book from me, and I'll sign it for you.
Right on. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, I'm very indebted to you. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bless you. Bless you, mister.
All right, you too.
Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Peace Nicks. You know the deal. If you like the podcast, go on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating, and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, The Peace on Drugs. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, go to www.thepeaceondrugs.com/subscribe. Also, don't forget, if you're want to try some hemp cigarettes, go to sugarcali.com, put in the offer code PEACE15 for 15% off your purchase. Thanks for listening. We're going to let Twiggy Branches once again take this away with Dr. Dealer.
You pay for what you get. You pay for what you can't. You pay for what you get when you align yourself with the pussy and just say, bet head, bet high, moves hard, pocket is mine. Go on, sending the beast, cocaine and smile, and watching the sunrise, watching it all. be the sunrise. I'll be the sunrise. Are you my doctor? Are you my dealer? Are you my doctor? Are you my dealer? Are you my doctor? Are you my dealer? Are you my doctor? Are you my doctor? What you get, you pay for what you get, you pay for what you get, you pay for what you get. Are you my doctor? Are you my dealer? Are you my doctor?